All kōrero in this podcast are of a generalised nature. For specific advice, please talk to your tākuta o tohunga. This episode discusses sensitive topics like whakamate and whakamomori, suicide. Please reach out if you are at risk.
It's Kōrero Prescriptions. Because kōrero is healing. He rongo a te kōrero. Nau mai hara mai ki tēnei paki here roki. Mai te awa o te atua ki tonga riro ka rere taku manu ki toko rangi. Tēnā rā tātou katoa e ngauri o Tūwharetoa. Ko matariki hao tangata, matariki whanaunga kore. Ko puanga e huti tonu nei i te hunga mate. Hoki mai anō kia tātou e ngā pā whakawairua o rātou mā. Tēnā rā tātou, welcome to this podcast, Kōrero Prescriptions. Now with us, I am honoured to have my two learned manuwhiri. He tohunga wēnei ki ora aua ao. We've got Whaea Kimi. Tēnā koe Whaea Kimi. Now can you tell our kai whakarongo ko wai koe no whea koe?
Kia ora. No tūrangi tukua, no korauia, no te aho te rangi ahau. I rungi i tēnei whenua o Ngāti Tūwharetoa e mihi ana kia tātou. Ai.
Ka pai. And Whaea Meryl, we're going to call you Whaea Meryl. From here on out, you'll be known as Whaea Meryl.
Street.
I was almost going to say that. Tell us who you are, where you come from.
Kia ora, my name's Meryl. I hail from the Bay of Plenty. I'm Ngāti Rangi. I have come from a nursing background, well, first a mother, and then a nursing background when I was in my 30s, and midwifery, surgical, then moved into mental health, and now work for Tūwharetoa House, so in mental health.
Well, luckily, koira te kaupapa, that is what we're here to talk about today in this podcast. On Kōrero Prescriptions, we're all about oranga. This is just to open the door to the space of mental health. Te oranga o te hinengaro, ki tā te Māori titiro. No reira, kia whakarongo ki wēnei kōrero me te ata tiki ake i o rongoa. Ngā rongoa e hāngai ana ki a koe. My first pātai, because that's like, you guys work in the field of the goddesses. Like, this is not easy stuff. Tell me, what made you get into this field?
Well, that's a good question. I think when you experience mental well-being and the other side of mental well-being, you then decide at that point in time that maybe you could possibly tautoko someone else that is going through that journey. That's what got me into it, to be honest.
He wheako.
Ai.
He mea nui te wheako. Experiences. And you went from catching babies to...
Yeah,
I mean...
not a huge move, because women that are hapu
Yep.
suffer from, at times, from varying moods and changes in their mood with the hormone changes.
Yeah.
And after they've had a baby and then feeling the huge responsibility. I suppose my exposure to mental health was being married to a man that suffered from mental health episodes, and we managed to work together to keep him well and fairly stable, but it required for me to learn a lot about it. So that was kind of my first foray into it.
So both of you come from a place of life experience, which, I mean, i te ao Māori is everything. Can you talk about how our tupuna would have viewed this thing called te oranga o te hinengaro?
For myself, and like I've had to learn all of this in my life because, being raised, my father was Norwegian, and my mother being Māori, and I was raised when I was little on the marae, and so and then I was taken away from the marae, so I had kind of like varying views of what it looked like from a tupuna perspective. And I had to actually learn what that was and go dive deep into it. And what I discovered, and because I've been in this line of mahi for over 30 years now, what I discovered was that I had to figure out where did my story begin in relation to pūrākau. So, for example, the wehinga of Rangi Nui and Papatua nuku, I came to discover by going through those pūrākau, wow, you know, that was te pō. And was it a bad place to be, or was it a good place to be, or what was that? And so what I discovered through the pūrākau of Rangi, the wehinga of Rangi Nui and Papatūnuku, was that, you know, there's different states that we live in, and every state is okay. In terms of te Wairua, that's a place where I'm very comfortable. And so I don't look in books for things. I wait for messages to come, and they come to me naturally, and then I go with that. Some people might think that's a bit mentally unwell, but I don't really care.
Well, you said we choose the state of being that we're in, and what would you say? Because you know that's a world that I'm familiar with. You know, te tūhonotanga o te ao wairua me te ao hinengaro. How do you think the Western world, I'll ask you for Meryl Streep, how does the Western world define what mental health is?
Well, what is it? A state of living without disease or disorder. So that's a very old-fashioned way of looking at things and viewing things and labelling people. I believe we've come a long way, and I think that was what I've learnt in mental health, that you can see yourself in others. It's a reflection, depending on where you're at. And I think that was part of the growth in me, but also being able to support a service to work like that, and support the people in the service to work like that, that you meet people where they're at.
So we have, you know, we've been looking into the statistics for this area, for Tūwharetoa. They're not flash. Whakamomori is quite high. Depression, anxiety. But we know that the numbers don't paint the whole picture. So what would you say is the state of our nation?
That's a real good question. I think, you know, in terms of our people, like I said, you know, it's not for us to determine what state they're in. It's up to them to determine it. But in order to be able to determine it for themselves, it requires a conversation and what it is that they feel is a solution to moving forward, rather than us always looking to prescribe something for someone that comes from our worldview. The state of Tūwharetoa, I think, you know, with the current government activities that are going on, it is causing a lot of pressure on our people. And pressure, what I mean by that is that pressure against people and other, and that's not a great thing. You know, it's extra pressure on top of the pressure that was already there. I work with whakamomori every single day. One thing I learned about the word whakamomori was it was a long enduring state. It wasn't the end. So whakamate is the term that they utilise, especially in Te Arawa and over this way, for an actual completed suicide. Whakamomori is the long enduring state, And so that reminds me again about I te pō ki te ao marama. So yeah, in terms of our state of Tūwharetoa, there needs to be a lot of education around accepting where people are at. And in actual fact, this is go totally against what some people might think. The fact that people want to choose to go is another thing that we need to look at. It's a courageous conversation to have, but it needs to be had. And I remember speaking with some mental health experts in the Korona area as well, around pūrākau that talked about whakamomori and also whakamate. And that there are some references in our history around that from mai rāno, way back.
Like, you know, e tautoko ana i au kōrero, tēnā koe i era whakamārama. Would you say within your mahi you've seen the same sentiments reflected?
I think everybody has a safe space, a place that makes them feel at home, whatever that is. So whoever it is that makes that space good for you. I think when people lose their way, they lose that safe space and they've got to find their way back to it. Whatever that journey looks like for them and what the support that is needed around them at the time may change. From, if you looked at it on a continuum of illness to wellness, the people in their life can change in that space, and their life can change drastically.
Yes, because I've heard the saying within health, they categorise it as you're either mad, bad or sad. And so I was thinking, well, I go through those three emotions every day. But mental wellness or mental unwellness, is it being in a prolonged state of either of those things, or do you tautoko that kōrero?
I think, personally, it is a choice to choose to stay in that state, whichever state it is. But at the same time, what is that state is the question to ask ourselves, because it's not for someone else to determine what that state is. So, for example, if I said, I'm in te pō today and I'm going to stay here because I want to stay here. This is where I want to be. I'm going to jump in my bed and pull the covers over my head. I'm going to just stay there. It's okay because I need a rest. And so while I'm swimming around in te pō, lots of things will come to me and then I'll be like, okay, I'm back out in te ao marama again. I will take myself to te pō and be okay with that. It's not a bad place. It's a place of potential to be. And I come up with the most amazing strategies.
Potential.
Yeah.
Yes, potential.
Yes, potential. That's a great space to be in, but some people are afraid of it. And Western medicine has often talked about that being not a good place. Not literally, but they give the inference that no, you can't stay there, you need to move. Well, do we? Do we need to move? It's not up to us to decide.
I could see too, as an artist, we retreat to that place, to te pō. And you actually have to switch off the light to come back out with something, a creation. You can see how the perspectives of what this is clash. Because our tupuna, to write songs, to write haka, to paint, to do anything creative, we kind of need to sit in the pō for a little bit. I was looking also at Whaea Meryl's explanations of these things. As she said, within our reo we have whakamarama about what these things mean. So she mentioned wairangi, which is a state of being up in the sky, unhinged. Then the next state is pōrangi, in a dark sky, unhinged, harder to come back from, but still possible. And then a place of wainuku, which is down under the earth. And so she describes all these different states as rangi, I guess. And then Uncle Māori, of course, he reflected the same thing, but he also said that the hawairua is quite an important part, and they go hand in hand. What is your experience of that, the meeting of, te ao hinengaro me te ao wairua? What has your experience of that been? Can you give us like an example?
For me, wairua is wāirua. And so what my hākui, one of my hākui, Rose Pere, said, it's about the space in between. Wā, creating space and time, in between the two worlds. True. And so for me, wairua is that, it's not necessarily like, there's lots of different terminologies and things you can come up with, but when I think about it in action, I'm neither here nor there. I'm just in the middle.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And is it okay to be there? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Who has the right to determine that? Myself, or anyone else going through that. But I love what you said. If I think about what you said, Moon shared, I think about sometimes we're in Rangi, sometimes we're in Papatūānuku, and all the spaces in between. And so sometimes we need to ground ourselves in the whenua, and sometimes we need to just let ourselves express however that is, rather than making it again up or down and in or out. Why not be in the middle of all of that and be okay with that?
Yeah, and I think that the hinengaro and wairua, if you are feeling down, it affects your whole. If your wairua is sparking and you feel alive, your state of mind changes and you feel energized. I think in mental health and in human life, we've created what is the norm that sits between this post and this post, and that's normal behaviours in society. What we haven't allowed for is for people's ecstasy to come through, because that's seen as abnormal or wrong, or you can be locked up for it or whatever. And their thinking and creativity is often heightened in that time. So the definition of mental unwellness needs to be addressed, because it's a big wide space in there, and we change week by week, day by day. And societal norms have become freer in other spaces and places, but not so much in mental health.
So what I'm hearing is there's a lot of stigma around it. There's a lot of stigma around men having to be hard and be a po all the time.
I think we need to dispel the illusions of what a leader is and a rangatira. So for me, rangatira is someone who weaves. They don't have to be a male or a female, a tāne or wahine. Some of our rangatira are our mokopuna, because they weave us to a different state of understanding and a different state of being, just by being themselves simply in front of us, right? we need to be looking at the pressure that we're putting on leadership or rangatira in our ao. You know, I think of Tūwharetoa here. If you think of some of our leadership that are always at the forefront and still being pressured over and over again to continue to do, we need to relieve some of that pressure and learn to ask those rangatira, ask those leaders, what can we do for them? How can we walk with them to ease the burdens that they carry? Because I think, you know, you're all wonderful when you're popular and you're doing all the right things, but the minute you do one thing that doesn't align with what supposedly our iwi would like, then you're gone. And then all that pressure comes down again, but from the opposite, you know, from the opposite perspective. And so I think we need to, especially within our iwi, look at how we can support better our leadership, our whānau out there, and not just look at certain people as leaders within our iwi. Look across the board and share that load, you know, instead of imposing it on a few.
Yeah, well, that's a big thing, eh? Expectation. What do you say is the impacts of that? The expectations on people?
I suppose what's alarming in our country is the amount of children, young children, that are not liking their image, they don't fit in, they perceive they don't fit in, they're isolated, and this is as young as 7, 8, with young babies being diagnosed with depression. It's very frightening that the pressure is put on by what? Society? By other children? I don't know. What is the pressure that's going on them? And until we understand that, and is it self-imposed? Do they have to be like everyone else? Is it that need to fit in and not be different? So we need to understand that to address it, because it's only going to get younger. And we haven't got very good statistics in New Zealand. They speak for themselves. And I think it's time I wish it could be called something else, because there is when everyone hears mental health, they think of illness, they don't think of health. And so I wish we could wave a wand and call it something else and make it look different. But we must address what's happening with our children.
Do you think our current health system is equipped to look after Māori and Tūwharetoa uri in our midst? Okay.
Absolutely not. No is
No.
the answer. We have been, we set up a rōpū called Hui Te Ao Marama, and the reason we set that rōpū up is because there was no one really advocating for Te Ao Māori in that space that we could see. And we're on the ground floor all the time, in the whenua all the time. And we were actually tired of waiting for our people to have service for anything. So we had to take it upon ourselves to actually be that service. But we had to also remind ourselves that we couldn't keep doing that and stay well ourselves if we didn't come together. And some people didn't like that, because it was like we were being elitist and only taking care of Māori, and our iwi and our whānau hapu. But the reality is no one else was going to do it. So we don't even ring anymore, to be honest with you.
Is it the same with you? I mean, I've certainly had experience ringing a crisis team who never turned up, and it had to, we had to reach out to the police. And a lot of our people end up in a crime system when we could have just helped them with a mental
Yeah,
health.
it is. And I think that the thing that's fundamentally got to change is New Zealanders have got to make this change. Because if we don't talk about it, if we don't not turn away from it, you know what I mean? People turn away from it. It's embarrassing. They don't want to see it. They want to get rid, push it aside. If we don't confront that, it's going to remain the same. It is changing. It's very, very slow because people don't talk about mental health. And even things like a mental health wellness day that you have off paid rather than a mental health sickness day. You know what I mean? It's
True.
about changing that rhetoric that's around it to keep people well rather than waiting for them to get sick and then calling it, oh, they're out off having a mental health day. So we need to change the lens on mental health.
If, say, you were given, I don't know, $100 trillion to do one thing for mental health within our iwi, what would you do first?
I would have a hui and ask the people what they needed. That's what I would do. That would be the first thing I would do. And then look about how we would apportion the resource to those areas. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that have the answers, not us. We might be able to support with some things that align with what they want, but that is our responsibility, really, is to see what the people feel they need and how they need support and how we can walk with that, because it's not our decision to decide.
What would you do?
100 trillion, health and education. They need to be hand in hand in schools. Right, kura kaupapa, right back. Because you value yourself more if you understand more about what makes you tick. What makes you you doesn't make you unwell, it makes you you. Might be different, but different's okay.
If you were to give us some advice on how to deal with the political noise that we're currently going through, what would that be?
Create the change you want to be. That's it. The people have the power. It might feel like we haven't sometimes, but we have, and we can create the change. And we need support from others to do so, and we need to know who our supports are.
E tū whānau te manakaha o te whānau. The strength and power lies within each and every one of us, within each and every one of you. And we need to remember that. We actually don't need often what's outside of us. We actually need what's inside of us. We need to acknowledge the intergenerational mamai that has been handed down through behaviour, not our whakapapa. It's not our whakapapa that have made us who we are, necessarily in terms of the supposed what's mad, bad and sad. It's the behaviour that's been handed down. And if we continue to take on that behaviour, then that is a choice, whatever that looks like.
Ka vai. So smell the smells, this too shall pass, e tū e te whānau, and go dunk yourself in the lake. Koira taku summary, taku whakarapopototanga o enei kōrero. Thank you both for giving us an insight into your world, but also within all this kōrero, we've certainly heard some things that will help with healing, help with grief. Just by talking about it, I feel like, it will take a lot of pressure off our people. Nō reira e mihi ana kia kōrua. I te nui o a kōrua mahi, you fellas got big shoulders, man, to do what you do. But thank you for sharing with us today. e koutou I te kāinga tēnā rā koutou. I hope you take what you will from all of this kōrero. You have been watching Kōrero Prescriptions e te whānau, supported by He Ara Whakapikiora and made here, right in the heart of Tūwharetoa, in the mighty Rangi. Kōrero Prescriptions.
Production by Tūwharetoa Mohi. Post-production Raiha Paki. Director Raylene Walker. Production Manager Sierra Tullett. Producer Tūpautama Paki. Presenter Researcher Raiha Paki. Executive Producer Leanne Puohotaua. Reo and tikanga QA Hinana Media. Production House Tūwharetoa On.
He Ara Whakapikiora is our opportunity now to put into action the aspirations of our people.
Really important because it's helping us to come together as providers for our whānau. So not even that whānau, for our whānau. Kaimahi.
We're either Tūwharetoa by whakapapa or we're Tūwharetoa because we live in this rohe. And so when you peel some of those layers back, actually the challenges become opportunities. Opportunities to come together as whanaunga and opportunities to work better together.
So our whakapanui is to support kaumātua to access services.
I hope to see come out of it is that we actually be real, we be honest, and we look at each other as whānau, not as providers and all the dissections that we have.